For most people, pumpkin pie is a staple for Thanksgiving. But now that you're keto, do you have a go-to pumpkin pie recipe that you like to use? For me, I don't. So this is why we're having a pumpkin pie battle. They're the same, but they're not. So with any of my recipe versus battles, I only do the preparation of the recipe. I do not give you the recipe, and I do not give you exact measurements. I feel that the creators of these recipes deserve all that credit and deserve the traffic. So as I go over these recipes, I will put up the web address so that you can check them out yourself. And of course, that will be down in the description too, and you can just click on it from there to go to that recipe. I'm basically here just to make them and test them. So we've got 2 pies today. The first one is put out by the Wholesome Yum, and it is just a traditional pumpkin pie where you make the pie crust and the pie filling. She calls it the easy keto low carb pumpkin pie. Easy peasy. The second one is put out by That Low Carb Life, and this one is called Keto Pumpkin Pie with Streusel Topping. And so they're very similar to each other, but a little bit different. One has got the crust on the bottom, and the other one has got that streusel crust on top. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to show the steps of putting these together. And then after that, I'm going to pop up the macros for each pie, the serving size and the macros. That way you know how many carbs you need to save. So if you want to cherish a piece of pumpkin pie, whichever one you decide to go with, you know what you need to keep aside. And then, of course, at the very end, my favorite part is the taste test. We'll be tasting them. I'm going to be breaking them down and seeing if I would change anything and what my final thoughts are going to be. So let's dive into this. All right, so the first pie that we're going to make is called the Streusel Topped Keto Pumpkin Pie, and it's by That Low Carb Life. Putting the link down to it right now, and of course it'll be in the description because they deserve all of that attention. All right, let's get started with this. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to add our pumpkin to this. Next, we're going to add our sugar and our spice. It calls for 2 eggs. And some heavy whipping cream. And we're just going to mix this all together. Set that to the side. Obviously, while we're mixing these all up, we are preheating the oven to 350 degrees. So with this, the pie custard is going to go on the bottom, and we'll be putting the streusel on top. So I'm just going to spray this down with some avocado oil spray. And now we're just going to go ahead and go ahead and put this in our pie pan. to stick this in the oven for 40 minutes. At that point, we're going to check it. It should be still jiggly at the bottom or in the middle. And then we're going to put the streusel on top and cook it for the last 15 to 20 minutes. So we'll be back in 40 minutes. We're at the part where we are going to make the crumb topping or the streusel topping for that pumpkin pie or pumpkin custard. And basically, you're just going to dump them and go. So this was almond flour, and I'm putting in some coconut flour, some cinnamon here. I'm going to go ahead and start giving a good mix here. Kind of break some of those lumps as you go. If you have a sifter, you probably would want to do that so it comes out a little bit finer and not as many bumps. I'll go ahead and add in our brown sugar substitute. I'm using Swerve. Just kind of breaking that up as I go. And it calls for about a half of a cup of pecans. You can use halves or pieces, and I'm just going ahead and using pieces here. And last but not least, we are going ahead and putting our butter, and this is going to make it turn into that topping that we know and love. Alright, so it's come up and it's nice and crumbly, just the way that we want it. And we're going to set it to the side and wait for our pie to get finished at that 40-minute mark. Alright, so here is that pie. It just come out at 40 minutes. You can see that in the middle it's still a little bit jiggy, and still a little bit jiggly. That's where we want it. So I'm going to go ahead and just sprinkle this streusel over the top of it. This custard pie should be cooked enough that when we put the topping on it, it should not sink down into the actual pie, and it's not. It's holding up the form really good. Alright, there we go. This is going to go back in the oven for 10 to 15 minutes. So for this easy keto low carb pumpkin pie recipe, we're going to get started with the crust first. So first we're going to get started. Oh, I got a runaway egg. We're going to get started with the almond flour here. And I didn't sift it, because it's all going to get worked out here through this process. So I went ahead and used Swerve for this pie too. It didn't specify a Pacific sweetener, so I'm just using Swerve. And I'm going ahead and mixing this in really well. I'm going to go ahead and add my salt. And I'm using Redmond salt, because I think it tastes the best. I'm going to go ahead and just incorporate all the dry ingredients together. Now, if you wanted to, you could use a food processor. That would make it a whole lot easier. But I'm just going to go ahead and do it by hand. And I'm making a mess already. Alright, so next we're going to put in our fat. You could use coconut oil, butter, or ghee. I have elected to go with butter. And we're going to add in 1 egg. and I am going to do the vanilla. It is optional, and it's just a half of a teaspoon, but I just didn't want to dirty up all my measuring spoons. Alright, now we're going to get this mixed up until it becomes crumbly and thoroughly mixed together. You just want to keep mixing until you make sure that it's all wet. Just keep folding it. Alright, so we have pre-baked that pie, and it looks, the pie shell looks pretty good. I got it over here cooling down, and now we're going to go ahead and mix up our ingredients for this pumpkin pie. So let's go ahead and start out with, basically this is just a dump and go to, so that was Swerve sugar. I've got some salt, red mint salt again. We've got some pumpkin spice. We'll go ahead and we got some eggs. We got some heavy whipping cream. I like to take my spatula and make sure I get all of it out, or as much as I can. And blackstrap molasses is optional, and so is the vanilla extract. I'm not going to use the blackstrap, just because that does add to the carb count there. But I am going to put some vanilla in there for some flavoring. Alright, let's go ahead and get this mixed up. I'll go ahead and scrape down my sides here. Make sure that it gets evenly incorporated here. Alright. Actually looks pretty good. Alright. Let's go ahead and get our pie, or filling into our pie. Alright, that looks pretty good. We do have one last step, and I've got my foil out here, and we need to make like a shield so that the very edges don't get burnt. So we're just going to kind of come in here
and put this up here on the edges. Alright, so like I said, it's not pretty, but that's our shield. So we're going to have this bake in the oven for 30 minutes, and then we will take off the foil so that the edges can brown up. Alright, we'll be back. We'll be back in 30 minutes.
So we are back at my favorite part of these battles. As you can see, I have my fork in hand. I am ready. And that is the taste test part of this. So you've seen how to make them. You've seen how they're different. Now we're going to talk about them just a little bit. So this first one is that easy keto low carb pumpkin pie. It's not the most beautiful because I'm going to be real honest with you. It was not easy to get out of the pie crust. I may have not greased it enough. You can also use parchment paper. That probably would have made it a whole lot easier. But I just wanted to make it as traditionally as possible. The second one that we have here is that keto pumpkin pie with streusel topping on it. It looks very good, and you can see it's very different. So yeah, let's get started with this, okay? This first one, again, is just that traditional easy pumpkin pie. So let me go ahead and taste this. Okay, so with this pie, where I had the hardest time with it was the crust and where it dips down and evens out. That was the hardest time. I had a really hard time getting this pie out, which is why it does not look beautiful. If you ever messed with pies, you know that first slice is usually not beautiful. And if it is, you're an expert. Kudos to you. But like the filling tastes very much like pumpkin. But I don't think it's quite sweet enough. Like the crust is sweeter than the actual pie filling is. It's good, but like you can taste that one part of it is a little more sweeter than the other. And I kind of don't know how I feel about that. So let's go on to our next one. This is that keto pumpkin pie with the streusel topping on it. It does have walnuts into it. I never thought about this concept before, to be real honest with you. But yeah, let's dive into this. Okay, there's another bite. So like the sweetnesses between the two are not vastly different at all. I really love the filling on it and the way you do it. You know, it's already partially cooked and it holds up the streusel topping, so that's really awesome. So it sinks down just a little bit. It's just, I like it a lot. Now, the pecans, I don't know if that's my favorite part about the streusel because I don't think it is. It does add a little bit of crunch factor to it because like when you have the traditional pie, you kind of have that crispiness of the crust and stuff, but it's moist. So, I mean, I'm sure that's why the pecans was added to it. And I like that. I just don't know if I would add the pecans again, but that's in my final thoughts. you got the flavor profile going through both of them because you got the cinnamon in the streusel and you got the pumpkin pie spice in the bottom. So you kind of have that carrying through those layers. Actually, I'm going to take another bite of this. So, 1 second. I'll be right back with my final thoughts. So it's time to pick that winner. I think I'm going to go with the pumpkin pie with the streusel topping on it. I just like that better for the simple reason that the flavor profile was through each layer and there was like no differences in the sweetness. Like I wasn't tasting one part being sweeter than the other. The original recipe did call for pecan halves. I did pecan pieces. I think for myself, I would just leave the pecans out totally. I'm just not a big fan of that. But if you like them, just make it with it. It's good. And I'm not saying that I don't like the traditional pie. I do. But I would definitely make some changes to it. Like I definitely would make the filling a little more sweeter. And I think if I was to make it again, which I probably will, I would put parchment paper in the pie pan. They actually said that you could do that. I think I really should have done that. That way it would have been easier to get the pie actually out of the pan. Where it dips in and turns flat is where I was having the hardest time trying to get it out of the pan. I don't know what happened there. But yeah, changing the sweetness and putting parchment paper in there, those are the two changes that I would make. So put down in the comments down below, did you have pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving? Was it just a traditional regular pumpkin pie or was it keto? Have you found a keto pie that you really love? Go ahead and put a link down there so I can go check them out too. And of course, if you like these type of videos, please subscribe and press the like button. And until next time, to that next battle,